Hey guys, Alan here, back in the workshop finally. I've been laid up with probably the worst cold I've had in my adult life for the last week. Anyway, I'm slowly emerging back into regular things. The video I'm showing here today started over a week ago, before I fell over with this bloody cold. And basically my neighbour picked up a lawnmower from the side of the road and thought it showed some promise, but it had a couple of issues, and he asked me if I wouldn't mind having a look at it for him. So that's what this is. Let's dive straight in. Okay, so where we're starting. The thing's branded Rover, but in the way of the world, global sourcing, I'm not sure what difference that makes. It does have a Honda motor, and it's 160cc motor, and apparently it starts easily. The model code, for what it's worth, is 61H160. Has a 19-inch cut. The self-propulsion gubbins is largely under here. And the issue is, seems to lose the plot if you try and engage the, no, it won't roll back now. Now, in the absence of a manual, I'm just going to have to have a bit of opening up and have a see if we can see what's going on. I'm bound to make a few missteps here, but let's see what's under this under the skirt here. Maybe there's an adjustment issue rather than something being actually broken. My neighbour, the owner of this machine, obtained it from a roadside pickup. So he doesn't know anything about it except that it came at the right price. So let's see what happens. There's only 2 screws as far as I can see here. I need to come out a bit more. Right, let's see what's under here. Let's not lose that screw. And we can see that this clutch is letting go here. When we pull this up, okay, I think that's what the issue is, just there. I think this control cable is the problem. Don't know whether that's going to show up, but there's actually a kink in the cable here. And the cable is not releasing properly. I reckon that's all the problem is. It just needs a new control cable. Would be my initial guess, because that part of the deal works just fine. It's only when you try and operate it with the I think it just needs a new control cable. Okay, so I've removed the drive control cable which operates the clutch. I'll slip it in here for a moment. And when I first pulled it off, it was really stiff to try to pull this. It's a Bowden cable, and it was really stiff to try and work it through the conduit, the sleeve. So I just used some penetrating oil and dripped it on the hole, and I'll pull the other end of the cable, and perhaps you'll see that oil disappear down the hole. And I've done that a few times now, and the cable's operating quite nicely. It's not like new though, because there's a kink and damage to the cable and in the conduit, but I suspect that'll be good enough for the thing to work and the return springs to overcome the resistance. If they don't, well, we've just got to replace the cable. So I'll put the cable back on, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to stick the bottom of the cable in position first, because I don't want the oil which I've put in the conduit flying around down there and getting on that cork clutch plate. That wouldn't be good. And we'll sit that there. Just prop that out the way up here for a moment, like that. and refit this cover, because that feature there is what clamps the end of the conduit in place. Perhaps you'll be able to see that. Just pull up my little stool. Oh, my old knees don't like bending down these days. Okay, so yeah, so this is going to sit in there. It just hooks back in there. And we'll put this cover back on. Won't fool around with any of the adjustments at this stage. There's no way of knowing whether we have any reason to do that. Right, I'll hold that end of the cable. Now, a good part of the problem here is that this control cable is expected to go across here and up that side, and obviously it gets upset sometimes when the handles are folded. Now, I should have fed that other end through here first, but we might get away with it. Trod on a snake there. I'll take this cover off again. Just pull that back out of there and feed that down through there. That's what I should have done in the first place. Right. Okay, so this is supposed to come up the other side here. I'll just change the camera angle a little bit so you get a better look. So this is supposed to come up the other side here. Right. So what I'm interested in first up though is whether the you can see that still isn't as free as it should be. That should pop back. For the moment I'll do this up. It might be that overnight that penetrating oil will improve the situation. Alright, well, it hasn't improved overnight, so after a bit of googling around I found a replacement cable, which is just as well, because it's a fairly specialised sort of item as it happens. I don't know whether you can see quite there, but it's got this sort of feature on the end there for taking up the free play, so a generic cable was never going to cut it. And it turns out my local lawnmower place had one for $25, and I thought $25, done. Instead of fooling around, we slip him on there. Won't do anything up tight at this stage. He's got to go down through there. Okay, so this end's got to hook through there. That's got to go into that position there. Let's get you started. Right. Yep, that's going to, I reckon that's going to be just what the doctor ordered. Get this started. Won't run it for long, so otherwise I gas myself. Oh, turn the fuel like that. Come on. Right. Whoa. That took off at very high revs. It looks like there's a governor that's not doing what it's supposed to do. Something isn't right there. To investigate. So, not having a manual or any real understanding of how these things work, I decided to start by, even though I thought it was probably something to do with the governor, I thought I'd start by checking out around the carburetor and its connections, see if there's any obvious problem with linkages. So I popped the lid off the airbox and checked the air filter out, and yeah, it was a little bit dirty, but I've seen a hell of a lot worse. In any case, I couldn't see how that would have anything to do with over revving. So I took the what I thought were the retaining bolts for the airbox out. One short one. And two long ones, and even though it occurred to me to check that they were the same length, and they were, it didn't dawn on me that because of their length they were probably holding the carburetor on as well as the airbox. And yes, that's exactly what they were doing. So in the process of checking that out, the carburetor came away from the cylinder head and damaged one of the gaskets. So then I had no choice but to pull it all apart and clean it all up and put it back together. So it finished up getting a carburetor clean out it didn't really need. So I got the carburetor cleaned up and started to put it back on, and it pretty quickly became obvious that it was going to be quite tricky to do that, because those long bolts have to go through the airbox first, and then with the airbox in place you can't see what you're doing, and there's quite a stack of gaskets and the phenolic spacer block and heat shield and a whole lot of whatnot. So to help pull all that lot together, I decided to make up a couple of dowel pins, and they're just 6mm bolts basically, except I didn't have any 6mm rods, so I was using some 1/4-inch rod and turned the end down and put 6mm threads on the end of them, and that all worked, but it meant that there wasn't a lot of slack or free play in the holes. So with the carburetor, with all of its gaskets, heat shield and etc. all assembled and aligned on those two dowel pins, I put the airbox back on, held it in place with a short bolt, and then it was relatively easy to take each of the dowel pins out in turn and replace them with the long bolt. So it turned what would have been a really awkward job into something that wasn't too bad. Okay, back in the workshop today after a week off with what seems like the worst cold I've ever had. Anyway, hopefully I'm coming out the other side of that, although I know I sound a bit nasally still. So where I left off, I'd pulled the carburetor off, wasting my time. I got some practice at making gaskets, but that's all I got out of it. Put it all back together, fired it up, same problem. The machine went walking across the floor. My initial reaction was it was over revving, but in reality it wasn't. What had happened, this obviously is the blade bar. These blades are intended to swing around, but as you can see, they won't go right round. And one of the blades was in that position, and you can see that would make the bar hideously unbalanced, and that's what was making the machine dance across the floor. So the real issue is, why are these blades doing that? I don't know anything about the history of the machine, so it's possible they're not the correct blades. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I have to investigate. I'm thinking I might take it to a mower shop, someone who knows what these things are supposed to look like. But the obvious solution from my point of view is to either bend these tabs down a little bit so the blades can swing under, because it seems that maybe that's what they're supposed to be able to do. I don't know. Although you can see here actually that wouldn't work anyway, because the this would still catch that centre bolt. So that's interesting, isn't it? So what is it that's supposed to I think I'm going to have to go and talk to a mower shop. Right, let's leave it there, and I'll come back when I've got some information. Okay, so I've got to the bottom of all that. I went to the local lawnmower place. The blades were knackered, completely knackered. It isn't just that they're worn here. I think they've got the wrong profile as well, and also there's this critical element here is designed to keep the blade clear off the bottom so it can swing right around. So a new blade should have this fixed, and then we'll see it running. So all back together, we'll just give it a test fire. So we're going to call that fixed and give it back to my neighbour. Hopefully he'll be a happy chap. Okay, well that's all over and done with. My neighbour's got the mower, he's happy. It's a bit disjointed, I'm afraid, and that's because obviously part of it was done a week ago and then whatever. And I didn't take any video of working on the carburettor and making the gaskets. I mean, that's obviously a pretty trivial thing. I was actually interested to see though that the mower, basic condition of the mower is pretty good. The interior of the carburetor and the float bowl was really clean, and the oil was clean, so I think the mower should give him lots of good service. So it turned out that there were two completely independent issues. One was that the clutch cable was stuffed and couldn't disengage the drive properly, and unrelated, the blades were knackered and causing a grace imbalance and causing the machine to throw wobbly. Anyway, it's all good now, he's happy, and it's on to the next project. So cheers and see you in the next one.